Since their inception, explosive-laden torpedoes have become a fundamental and indispensable weapon of submarines. It was launched while the ship was still underwater. And this is where one of the things I'd in Faith 39V wondered about for a long time comes in. Why does an 39 seawater flood and after a submarine fires a torpedo? The torpedo tubes on a submarine have two covers, one at the front and one at the rear. The two torpedo tube caps operate on a mechanism that allows them to close simultaneously, but not open at the same time. When the front cap of the launch tube is opened, the rear cap cannot be opened. After the torpedo was launched, although seawater entered the launch tube, the rear cap remained closed, preventing it from entering the ship. When the launch is complete, the forward hatch is closed, and a special valve releases the seawater that has entered the launch tube into an internal tank within the submarine to replenish the mass lost during the torpedo launch, thereby maintaining the submarine in Faith 39's weight. Once the water in the launch tube has been drained, you can load another torpedo. What a fantastic design! Therefore, we can say that all submarine operations are carried out in the deep sea. But have you ever wondered and accurately answered why submarines can move faster underwater than on the surface? If not, now is the time for us to understand this issue better. The key here is their teardrop quat design. This allows submarines to glide through the ocean quickly when completely submerged. When they surface, a lot of energy is lost to the waves created by the ship on the water and Faith 39's surface. This energy loss reduces the engine and Faith 39's power output, so in Faith 39's not surprising that they swim slower than conventional ships with a bulbous or inverted bow. However, submarines are not always inferior to those that move on the surface. Older submarines, such as those used in World War II and the World in 39's first nuclear submarine, the USS Nautilus SN571, had their bows designed with angles to minimize wave arcs, allowing them to move faster on the surface than underwater. Of course, for this monster to function smoothly, human intervention is indispensable. The soldiers serving on submarines are among the most highly trained and skilled. In the Navy, but in 39, we noticed that it in Faith 39 is very rare to see women involved in submarine operations. Why? According to military experts, there are currently no female service members assigned to serve on submarines in the U.S. Navy due to the harsh living conditions and limited privacy in this environment. Women have only recently joined U.S. submarines as civilian technicians inspecting specialized equipment for short periods. Some female Navy personnel also attend 2-day orientation courses. But whether male or female, the requirements for a sailor are very strict, because they are operating an ocean assassin with the ability to dive deep and carry an incredibly terrifying arsenal. And the representative figure for both of these things is undoubtedly the Soviet nuclear-powered submarine K-278 Komsomolets, which holds the world record for the deepest dive at 1020 Nemun. However, it remained forever at the bottom of the ocean after the gas pipeline rupture, and since then no submarine has been able to break this record, even with much more advanced technology. Does this mean that submarines are no longer designed to dive as deep as they used to? To avoid detection by anti-submarine warfare devices, submarines need to dive to a certain depth. Therefore, deep diving capability is also an important criterion in the development of this type of equipment. Doing that would undoubtedly require a huge investment, and to meet the demands of deep sea environments, the ship in Faith 39's hull must utilize expensive alloy materials to withstand high pressure. In addition, the ship had to be designed with a double hull, which also cost a considerable amount of extra money. It is possible that only one submarine of this type was ever built due to the exorbitant cost. The United States is also researching and developing a Seawolf-class submarine capable of diving to depths exceeding 600 meters. This vessel is not only capable of submerging, but also boasts highly advanced equipment, making it one of the most powerful nuclear attack submarines in the world today. However, Seawolf only built up to the third vessel before stopping, because the U.S. military discovered that the ability of these submarines to dive very deep was not very effective. To achieve this effect alone, the cost of building such a submarine has reached $3 billion. Its exorbitant cost makes even a wealthy military like the U.S. feel reluctant to spend money on it. Later, Russia built quite a few submarines, but only 2 were capable of diving to a depth of nearly 600 meters. The Bory class. Strategic nuclear attack submarines can only dive to a depth of about 45 m, while the U.S. Ohio-class nuclear submarines can only dive to a depth of about 240 m. We can see that countries are no longer trying to make their submarines dive deeper. Under the same conditions, deeper diving certainly has certain advantages, but we shouldn't overemphasize the benefits of deep sea diving technology, because the deeper the dive, the higher the cost, and higher costs do not necessarily mean higher efficiency. In fact, noise-reducing technology is already sufficient to help them hide effectively. On the other hand, nowadays nuclear submarines all need to launch missiles, and diving too deep is not advantageous for launching, so the deep dive factor is no longer as important. Not only are submarines interested in how deep they can dive, but the maximum length of time they can stay underwater has also become a topic of great curiosity for fans. In fact, they are designed and have sufficient manpower to execute tasks that would typically take several months. However, whether they are diesel or nuclear submarines, they all have to surface periodically, but the reasons for this differ for each type. For diesel submarines, the diesel engines generate energy through an internal combustion process. That requires oxygen, so they must surface to obtain enough oxygen to ensure the submarine and Fe-39's mechanisms function normally. Submarines must surface every few days or more frequently, not only to obtain fresh oxygen from the surface, but also to release excess gas produced on board during operation. This process is made possible by a device called an snorkel and quat, which allows the vessel to operate underwater while still obtaining oxygen from the water and Fe-39's surface. Whenever the ship surfaces, its diesel engines activate and generate energy, which is used to recharge the batteries that keep the ship running. As for nuclear submarines, of course, they operate based on nuclear reactors. These reactors generate enough energy to power the ship and Fe-39's electrical equipment, as well as the life support systems for the crew. Therefore, unlike diesel submarines, nuclear submarines can operate for days, even weeks, without having to surface. Rest assured that those reactors can generate enough energy to keep the ship running for several decades. Although both nuclear and diesel submarines must surface to exchange information with base, receive new orders, or transmit other important information, because signals are less effective underwater. But you might be surprised to learn that food and supplies are the only limit to the maximum time a nuclear submarine can remain submerged, because typically they only bring enough food for 90 days. Undeniably, since their appearance in the late 19th century, submarines have quickly become an effective weapon for the navies of various countries. For a long time, there was no way to exterminate these ocean monsters. Submarines can move freely and destroy enemy ships without fear of detection. Even when they surface, it is very difficult to detect and see them from a distance with the naked eye. Especially in sunlight, the answer lies in the mysterious paint layer on the submarine and Fe-39's hull. Its primary purpose is camouflage, and black is the optimal color for concealing these monsters beneath the ocean and 39's surface. But when standing on the deck of a surface warship or any ordinary ship, it in 39's very easy to observe and spot objects on the water and 39's surface. Even modern binoculars and telescopes allow navigators to see objects as far as 70 km or more. In addition, all modern warships and destroyers are equipped with radar and sonar systems capable of identifying ships at very long distances. Therefore, the paint color on the submarine and Fe-39's hull is a crucial factor determining its survival, with black or gray being the most optimal colors to help them blend into their surroundings. This is also why submarines usually surface at night, because that in Fe-39's when they are extremely difficult to detect. However, not all submarines are painted black and gray, although these are the most common colors. You will see that some countries still choose different colors to camouflage their weapons for various reasons. For example, North Korean submarines are painted green, due to the color characteristics of the sea and waters where a nation and 39 submarines operate, as well as due to usage needs. Some other countries, such as Iran and Israel, also paint their submarine forces green. The submarines of these countries mainly operate in clear, shallow, and coastal waters where the green color provides better camouflage. Furthermore, not all submarines are used for military operations. They can also be used in deep-sea exploration operations or search and rescue missions. In these cases, camouflage is in Inter 39 the top priority, so you can give it any color you like. However, in the military field, black remains the preferred color due to the specific operational requirements of the vessel and its protection against enemies, while camouflage remains the most stringent requirement for perfecting a submarine. However, you should remember that using dark-colored coatings is only a very small part of the camouflage efforts of this type of equipment, because almost 99% of submarine operations take place underwater. The big problem was figuring out how to prevent them from colliding with each other and being detected by the enemy. When a submarine dives to a depth sufficient to use its periscope, it will determine its position once using its GPS navigation system. Once the ship is completely submerged, it will use its own navigation system to sense changes in course, combining this with speed measurements to calculate the ship in Faith 39's precise position. At the same time, the pilot will calculate the ship in Faith 39's position based on the route, speed, water depth, and adjust accordingly to ocean currents. The data obtained will then be compared with the data from the ship and 39's onboard navigation system to ensure consistency. Submarines also use sonar radar for navigation. In addition, this radar is also used to avoid colliding with our submarines and to detect and hunt down enemy vessels. When people talk about acoustic radar, they usually think of active radar, the kind we often see in movies. Active radar will emit a ping sound underwater and check for the echoes to see if anything is there. Submarines never use this type of radar. Instead, it uses passive radar, meaning it in 39's always listening. Once a sound is detected on a specific frequency range, which is typically only produced by submarine activity, we will track that signal to pursue and destroy the target. Things will be a little more difficult in shallow water. At that time, you could use a periscope to look around, but your mobility would be severely restricted. If an anti-submarine vessel appears ahead and you don't in Faith 39 dive deep enough or fast enough, you in Faith 39 are definitely in big trouble. You must have seen this ship appear very early on. Operating in shallow waters also means being more easily detected by the enemy. Pointing the periscope out of the water would be like giving the enemy a way to spot you. This information concludes the journey of deciphering seemingly simple questions, yet few know the exact answers about the monsters lurking in the deep sea. What other types of weapons are you curious about? Feel free to ask interesting questions to the Military Technical Committee by leaving a comment below. Don and Faith 39 forget to like and share if you find this video helpful. And now, Viet Quang would like to say goodbye and wish you all a happy new day.